Do you ever get one of those itches where you know you don't need something, but you're going to build it anyway? Been watching quite a few mallet videos lately. I find them quite a nice little build video. So I thought, even though I've got one, why not make a couple more mallets?
So job one for this little project is quite simple. It's measure, mark and start the cutting.
So now that we've got all the pieces that we want, it's quite simple. I'm going to glue them together with a contrasting one in the middle.
Now that the blocks are in clamps gluing, it's time to start on the handles. For this, I'm going to use my lathe for the first time.
Right, there we go, we're down to about final thickness now. Some nice finger grooves in, looking quite well. Just a quick update, we have a couple of mallet heads drying and we have two handles made and ready to go, all with finger holes. Now that I've got my blocks out at clamps, I'm going to look at cutting them down and shaping them. I'm going to go with table saw because I've got a blade on it that's got more teeth, gives a finer cut than my mitre saw. That's a little bit of a butcher, is that thing. I'm going to use my mitre gauge and a clamp just to hold it because it's a little bit small and fire it through to about a 7 or 8 degree angle. After a couple of goes through the table saw, I'm left with two heads. One that's slightly more refined with some angles and another one that's squarer, a little bit more bulky, but I like them both in their own ways. Now certainly for this bigger one, we're going to have to look at doing something a little bit more fancy just to take your eye off how big and square it is.
Time for a quick sand now. We've got some 120 and a little bit of light filling to do. Attaching the mallet head to the handle should be quite easy in theory. I'm just insetting a hole with a small one in the middle for a big dowel and then clamping them together. It's fast becoming one of my favourite things, but lasering a little bit of detail onto something doesn't half change the look of it.
I'm pleased with that. Look how that's turned out. And a little one on the back, just in case you're confused which one's the big one and which one's the small one. So it's time for some finish. I really shouldn't on this project, but I like them that much I'm going to roll out the big guns. A little bit of Odie's oil. Normally don't waste this on garage projects, but on this occasion I'm going to make an exception. And there we go, two finished mallets. Got the big thwacker, got the little thwacker. I like them both different. This one's nice, big and chunky. This one just feels a little bit more delicate. I'd like to say it brings some finesse to my woodworking, but I'll probably still be butchering things. So as always, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you on the next one.
If you're anything like me, you probably didn't get into messing about with all this wood to actually go and sell things. Certainly when I started, I had no idea how expensive this little hobby was going to end up being. Some of these tools, even when you buy them on sale or second hand, it all adds up to quite a tidy little sum. So I thought it's about time I started making some stuff and selling it to try and get these things paying for themselves and giving a little bit back to the workshop. So I had a great find lately at a local wood merchant that were having a bit of a closing down sale. I got a load of different hardwoods for next to nothing, sort of deal you can't really turn down. So I've looked at making some stuff to see if I can sell, to see can I actually make this workshop start paying for itself.
So the first job is to break this piece down. This is the biggest bit of hardwood I've worked with, so this could get really interesting. It measures 2 meters long, 9 inches wide and 2 inches thick, and it's about straight as a bloody banana. Right, that's the planing all done. The sun's finally out, so it's onto the driveway to chop this piece down a bit. I'm going to cut it to the thickness of my birch scraps, as they're about the right size for a chopping board. So this is what I'm left with, 6 really nice thick strips, plenty of width on it. What I think I'm going to do though, I'm going to put these 3 together, take these 3 over here, I'll birch scraps in, and I think I'll have this one as a bit of a charcuterie board and this one as a traditional chopping board. I can finally breathe easy now that the art graft's done. I've added a piece of walnut onto the chopping board to beef it out a bit, as it looks a little bit skinny. We're anything but skinny around this place. Now it's on to the finishing. And with a quick polish up, and before you know it, got 2 boards. Nice chopping board and a nice charcuterie board. But that's not going to be enough, is it? So let's see how many others I can get made up in time. So I'm all ready now. It's time to do my first market. Never done one before, always shied away, but it's a real small local one. We'll see how we get on. Got a couple of other bits to take with me. Got this coffee table that I made off camera. Of course got the charcuterie board I just finished. And a couple of other ones with different designs. Little tea light candle holders. Lots of different things in lots of different price ranges. Hopefully that should attract a little bit of business. So cost wise, we're looking at about a £50 outlay. I'm quite happy with that for the price of wood. That includes some of the scraps as well from previous projects.
but doesn't include the £20 I spent for legs on the coffee table. But I'm quite confident overall I should get that money back. This is my first time doing any sort of market. Anything like this where I've put myself out there trying to sell me stuff. I won't lie, I've put it off out of nerves, but it's time to give this a go and start making some of these tools pay for themselves. Let's see how we get on there. I'm back now from the market. I'm happy to say I managed to sell 5 things, so I've made my money back on what my outlays were. I've still got my coffee table and I've still got 15 items to sell. I'll be sticking them on Facebook Marketplace, trying to attract anyone who needs a last minute Christmas bargain. But other than that, I'm quite happy with how it's gone. And I'll certainly be going back and doing a lot more, probably some bigger ones as well. Hopefully, like I say, in no time, we can have some new tools in this place. Thanks for watching.
Have I just found the most underrated tool for accuracy in my workshop? I mean, don't get me wrong, we've all got one of these. We've been putting roundovers, chamfering all the things, but by using this flush trim bit and a template, I'm hoping to take my work to the next level. But this is a workshop full of mistakes and disasters. So let's see whether this can improve things for me and whether there's anything that you can take away from this video. So first of all, we need to make a template. I'm going to use a laser for mine here, but you could use cardboard, MDF, plywood. The options are limitless as long as you can make a shape. So while this laser's working away, making a template, I need to find some wood. Now I've been saving this wood for a special project and I think this is just right. This is a piece of reclaimed mango wood. It was part of a 6-foot dining table that a gentleman round the corner was throwing away because one of the metal legs were broke. This stuff's beautiful, but there's one thing about it. It's got a very rough finish. It's still got the saw marks in and you can't see it, but this thing is up and down all over the place. Now with the template complete, I'm just going to find somewhere that I can put it on where the grain orientation's going to be what I want. Now while I do this tracing and then cutting a rough shape out, I want to tell you a little bit about the piece that I'm making. This summer we went to Disneyland in Paris, and whilst there we collected all the Challenger coins that we could find, and I wanted to make something that could go on the wall for my little girl to remember her trip forever. So as always, when working with any reclaimed materials, I always like to use my metal detector. So I've got this wrong before, I've just put new blades in planer. I don't want this to be a £60 mistake. It always amazes me how much unseen material is in a piece of reclaimed wood. It's a funny old game is woodworking, isn't it? Just when you think you're making some progress, you turn the planer on and the drive belt snaps. More than one way to do everything though, isn't there? So we're on to the belt sander. Oh, I hate this thing. And a short time later, and enough dust to annoy every neighbour I've got, we were flat again. I then scribbled on and started on 80, 120 and 150 grit, moving left to right, then up and down to get all the coverage. If you'd like to see more videos of me overcomplicating simple projects whilst annoying my neighbours with endless dust and noise, consider hitting that like and subscribe button for me. It'll really help a small channel like mine out. And now I've finished pestering you, it's back on with the build. I'm tracing out the shape for real now so I can trim off as much of the excess as I can. I'm going to use any tools that I've got to do this, from my miter saw, onto my jigsaw and even the handsaw where needed. Now that I've got rid of the bulk of that material, I'm going to put it on the laser so I can put on the circles where the coins are going to go and the outline so I can line up my template nice and flush. Progress so far, we've got a rough cut with the jigsaw, just shy of the line, nearly touching it in a couple of places. Got my flush trim router bit or pattern bit, depending what you want to call it. Now to stick the template on, I've doubled it up just so there's a bit of extra purchase space for the router. See how this gets on. So a couple of pieces of double-sided sticky tape later, and it's time to press the template on down. Now it's important at this junction to discuss router bits, because not all bits are equal. This is your cheap Amazon bit, straight edged. This butchers things worse than I do. Whereas here on the new one, this has got both an up and a down cut bit together, making sure that you get flush, clean edges on both top and the bottom. This is my new favourite bit. So with the bit in the router, I've got the template on the bottom, and it's a case of just going round and letting the bearing track the template, making the cuts to the exact same size. When you're done, the template is simply prised off with a putty knife. I'm absolutely made up with how this has come out. Look at it. And this finish is absolutely amazing. This is beyond where I thought it would take my accuracy. So if that's a measure of how good this process is, I'm all for it. I think I'll be using this again going forward. Just needs a tiny bit of clean up. Put such a light sanding. The purpose of this is to put these little challenger coins in. Got 12 in total, and I'm going to countersink them all into the workpiece so it all looks nice and flush. Now this is where a drill press would have really come into its own, but I've not got one, and sadly I've forgotten my hand drill press that's locked away in a cupboard somewhere, so I've free-handed all the holes in, trying to make sure that the coins fit flush with the top of the wood. Once I'm happy with each fit, I'm going to glue them in using a hot glue gun. Now there are better options available, but I would like the possibility of maybe taking these out in years to come, so I didn't want to use something too permanent like epoxy. Now everyone's favourite part's coming up, it's adding the finish. There's nothing better on a project than getting to this stage and seeing the whole workpiece pop and come alive as you rub on your favourite finish. For me, that's Odie's oil. Goes on nice and easy, leave it for 20 minutes and buff it off. I'm absolutely gobsmacked at how well this has come out. Who'd have thought that just using that one technique would have got the accuracy level right up to 100%. I've never been near that accurate before, but I'll be doing this process again, so hopefully I'll keep up those results. So what have we learnt today? That some simple processes can really improve how you go about your woodworking. Doesn't take much to become a lot better. Hi guys, and welcome back. This week's video, I'm going to be looking at my new toy, because I've got a laser. Now I did loads of research before I got one of these, because I knew I really wanted one. However, the one video that I could never find was of someone who had no knowledge of computers managing to get one working. So that's what this week's video is. Can this idiot who can't use a computer manage to make that thing work? Or have I just blown a load of money on something I'll never get to work? Let's find out. Now the first bit to do was to build the machine. This was always going to be the easy bit, because I can do this sort of stuff without too much drama. So there we go, all built, part 1 complete, and about 40 minutes on the clock. It's going well. So it's onto the computer side now, and here's when it started to get tricky. Turns out there's a difference between a Chromebook and a laptop. Who knew? So after sorting that problem out, it was on to deciding what software to use. From all the videos I'd watched over the past year, it seemed like most people use Lightburn. It comes with a free 30-day trial, and it's dead simple to sort out. You download the program, it guides you through the system to get it going. So I found that Lightburn brings up the install software straight away. You click Find My Laser, and sadly for me, it didn't find it. I spent a little bit of time trying to remedy that. I downloaded some drivers that'd work on it, still didn't work. So I used one of the preset options and just changed around some of the settings so it matched my machine. And that were it. I was up and running. So now I've got to program something in. Something that can be transferred onto the laser and produce an end product. What better place to learn than that bloody internet? And that led me straight to computer creations on YouTube with this lovely guy, where I learnt 10 basic tricks. That were the best 37 minutes I invested in this entire project. So to begin with, I just messed around with some wording, just to see what I could do. See what's the difference between cut and fill, and making sure that I can check on the preview that everything's where it should be before hitting that send button and engraving some stuff. So engraving a bit of writing onto a piece of scrap's one thing, but I wanted to actually make something that was going to be worthwhile, that was going to add some value, something that I could add to my repertoire of things that I'm looking to sell in 2024. Because ultimately, I need to make this thing pay for itself. So I thought, why not start with coasters? and after a quick scan through Etsy, I had a few ideas. Then it's time to put some of them 10 principles I learnt into action. One of the biggest I learnt was that if you draw a border and put the measurements in, you'll have a workpiece that matches the size of your wood. So that's where I started. A simple border with a second border inside to give me a buffer zone so I wasn't too close to the edge, and it's simply some writing and a circle before pressing play. Just to test it out, I've printed it on a piece of scrap to see how it goes. And after a couple of tweaks, I was happy with what I had. So it's time to move on to a proper workpiece. To align your piece, it couldn't be any easier. Press your framing button and keep tweaking your wood until it matches perfectly like this. Once you're happy, press go and the engraving starts. Absolutely magic. Look at that thing go. And this is it, fresh off the engraver. Looks alright. With hindsight, I think I need to up the settings a little bit on the power, just make it a bit deeper and darker. But other than that, it's time to add a bit of finish and pop. There it is. Not too bad for a first attempt. A little bit of tweaking on the settings and I think we'll be there. Product number 1, home and dry. Now I've turned the power up from 30 to 50 and tried it again. Looks much better. I'm quite pleased with that. So, let's talk time then. At the beginning, I spoke about not being able to use a computer and my fear being that I couldn't make that thing work. Or maybe it would this thing work. Either which way, I've made it happen. I have honestly got limited computer ability. I've spent 4 evenings and a grand total of about 9, maybe 10 hours in total to build it, set it up, have a look at how to use the software, have a quick play around with it, then design a coaster and take a couple of attempts to print it out. And that's about 9 hours work for somebody who can't use computers. Like I say, this was always about being the video that I wanted to see. So I'll sign it off with what I needed to see. These things are designed to help you when you load them up. Or certainly this one is. The Sculpt Fun. It leads you through the programming. And there's enough videos out there for you to be able to have a look at some stuff fairly quickly and get some basic products knocked out. So to answer the question, can somebody with limited ability on a computer make this work? I think they can. And it'll be interesting to see how far I can make this go, how far I can improve, and can I make this into yet another useful tool that's going to earn some money in this workshop. It's upgrade time in the workshop and I'm so excited. So when I found one of the accessories that I've been looking at for a while, I was absolutely made up. So I jumped straight at the chance and got it ordered. I mean, what could go wrong ordering from China? But there again, this is one of my videos. So I did get something wrong. But if you stick around, watch me fix that problem, I'll let you know at the end all about the build quality, the pricing and what I think. I love my table saw, but there's one problem. It's this fence. I mean, look at it. It's tiny. It's crappy. I've had to put tape on it to try and make it go properly in the runners. Don't even get me started on accuracy with this thing because it's shocking. So I've upgraded. Uh-oh. I can't believe I've done this. I mean, we've all heard of measure twice, cut once. But measure twice, purchase once? I'm going to have to try and fix this. I am not trying to send this back to China. That's just a level of grief nobody needs. So, my two options are fairly simple. I either grind out that lip, could be rather tricky and rather messy, and completely bugger the saw, or do I route out this piece here and make a channel? I think I'm going to go for that one. So before I route anything out, I'm just going to have a quick look under here, make sure that there's no hardware that I'm going to hit. Not sure if you can see that. I've got a screw, which I assume will mean there might be one further down as well. Best not hit them, have I? So to get the right depth, I'm simply offering up the piece to the router bit to make sure that I get the right size. To keep it all straight, I'm going to move the fence over to this side of the saw. Check with the router to make sure it's in line. Make any minor adjustments that are needed. And then we should be good to go. Now I didn't want the router bit to touch the metal part of the table because it'd make a right mess. So there's a tiny 2mm strip left. Run the multi tool down the edge to remove it. We've done 2 or 3 test cuts now and we've got it just how we want it. It's running nice and level and smooth. Time to put the side units back on. This is quite simply lifting everything back to place, making sure it doesn't impede the runner, and then screwing it back down again. As you can hear, this isn't as smooth as you would like. I'm going to sand the table back down, add a little bit of wax, should make it nice and slippy and runny again. And after a quick polish, it's running quite nicely. But an upgrade's only any good if it's an actual improvement. So let's see how this thing cuts with the 5 cut square check. So the principle is quite simple here. You run a cut through, turn it 90 degrees, run it through again, going all the way around, making 5 different cuts. So the first part will have been cut twice. That should give you a nice square edge if it's all in line. Now I'm absolutely amazed. This is the squarest cut I think I've ever made. I don't know whether it's fluke, don't know whether it's the fence, don't know whether it's both, but I'm chuffed with the result. Now I did promise you I'd talk cost. This thing cost me just under £40 from Temu, and I'm astonished with the build quality if I'm honest. So there's 3 main parts to this. So first of all, you've got the rail with the actual mitre gauge on the back. I love this thing. It tightens down at multiple points and has a positive stop when you're changing the angle. Got this lovely aluminum fence. And the third part is a little stop block that runs along it. A little bits here, and it also can go in the front as well. I'm chuffed with that. So this thing came nicely packaged, well wrapped and without any defects. And it's shipped in the time frame you would expect something to come halfway around the world from China. So there we go. As long as you take forward the lesson from today's video of measuring twice, you can take your cheap factory accessories, throw them in the bin. Well, thanks for watching. If you've got something out of this video, consider hitting that like and subscribe button. I don't know about you, but I seem to lose so much time looking for my phone in and around workshop. I put it down, it gets buried by stuff, I can't find it. So I'm going to do something about it. I'm going to build myself a little phone holder so I can put it somewhere in workshop. I can see if it's ringing and I shouldn't lose it again. It's a nice simple build, so sit back, relax, and let's see how this one works out. Now the great thing with projects like these is that they're good for both beginners and for clearing out your scraps bin. Perfect. So now we've got the piece that we want, it's time to rip it down to size. This one fit lovely and just needed cutting in half. Next it's on to marking out. You need a piece at 9 inches and one at 6 inches. I've recently upgraded all my blades to 80 teeth. The difference in cut is absolutely amazing. So you can see the basic design coming together. 2 pieces are going to have half a slot each and placed together. I always like to use something for a reference instead of just going off marking. First I use my phone and then I use the thickness of the other piece of wood to make sure that I've got a hole the right size. First of all, I tried removing this by drilling a small pilot hole and then using the bandsaw. But my bandsaw isn't strong enough. I changed tack quickly, went back to the table saw, this time using my mitre gauge instead of the fence. Taking multiple passes, I cleared out all the material checking to see if it fits and sneaking up on that cut. Once you're happy with where you've got and it's not too tight and it's not too loose, it should slot together nicely and you can start to see how this thing's going to come together. I'm always a fan of checking, making sure everything fits well before you move on. It's everyone's favourite part next, sanding. Now I was quite lucky with this being leftovers from another project that had been milled up. There wasn't that much to do, just a little bit of round over on the corners. I did of course have the bandsaw damage to try and repair. Now with these only being little, I was able to get my rag out with a little bit of excess polish on and just give them a quick wipe over before one final fit to make sure that I'm happy with how it's going to look. Oh, that's the one. And there you go, one very simple phone stand build. And once you've got one, it's amazing how easy you can use that prototype to make loads of others. Now we can make any design that you want as easy or as complex as you like. Thanks for watching. If you've taken anything from this video, consider giving me a like and subscribe, it really helps me out. But until next time, have a good one in shop. The humble pallet, we've all got one, or you can find one, tucked up behind some bin somewhere. These things are literally everywhere you go. But what if I told you there was an easy way to make the humble pallet board into some fine looking furniture using nothing other than something you learnt at school and 2 cuts. Now, those 2 simple cuts are quite simply just 2 30-degree angled cuts on your miter saw. Now, if I've made this sound rather simple, I've got to be honest with you, it is a little bit more complicated. You've got dozens of these cuts to make, and that thing you learnt at school, it's quite simply maths. 3 30-degree cuts equals 90, and what does that create? An optical illusion. So stick with me, and let's get on with this build. Now for this project, you're going to need some different shades of wood. Now you can either get lucky in one palette, or you can get a couple of different palettes to help you. From there, it's a case of clamping them together and starting to clean them up. I do this primarily by running them through the planer. And we've got a bit of a jig set up here. And what that's going to do is give us a 30-degree cut, which on this saw has a positive stop. And as we slide it in, that should cut nicely every time. Now the trick to getting this to work is to make sure that your length and your width are exactly the same, otherwise it doesn't fit. Right, that's all of the boards cut down. There's a little bit of tear out on a lot of them, so it's on to sanding. Now, there's a bit of a cheat to this. The 0 clearance fence and an 80-tooth miter saw blade don't have cut down on that sanding. So, I've gone for a loose fit. First of all, just to make sure I've got enough pieces, but 2 to see how it goes together. If you can see, I've got 3 different shades of wood. I've made sure all 3 grain patterns are going in different directions. And the effect, when you start to look at it, it's pretty damn good. Now on their own, these pieces aren't going to be stable enough for a tabletop. So I've been in the scrap pile and dug out an old piece of shelving that I can mount them on. This should keep it all nice and rigid. As you can see, this board is too wide for my miter saw. So my top tip here is to flip it over mid-cut and continue from the other side. Now before we get on to putting the pieces down themselves, I'm going to make the border now. I'm hoping I can do this so it will help hold the pieces in place. A couple of clamps should keep this nice and tight. I don't think you'll quite see that in any woodworking textbooks, but it's got some tension on it, which is better than nothing. It was at this point that I went on to make one of the biggest mistakes of this build. Because I have no patience, I crack straight on and try to glue it all up in one go. I can't even describe to you the time pressure this put me under. Now that we're all glued up, I'm really impressed with how this has come out. I'm really pleased with it. It needed a little bit of sanding just to make sure everything's level. I've trimmed down the ends, stuck a small round over on it, and then got to sanding through the grits. For the base, I'm going with some hairpin legs. They're a classic look with pallet wood and always come out really well. We're moving on to finishing now, and because I'm so pleased with how it's come out, I'm going to use some Odie's oil on this to really enhance the 3D effect. This stuff's amazing, lovely and thick till you give it a good stir, and it smells truly amazing. Drizzle a little bit on a stick and buff it in, leave for a short time and buff it back out again. I'm really pleased with the sheen that's come up on this. And there we go, a fully functioning coffee table. Not usual run of the mill, other than a couple of bits where I should have selected a bit better wood. You can't tell this is pallet wood. Absolutely amazed at how this come out. It's going to take pride of place in my living room. Birthday presents and scrap wood. Is there a better combination? And just like all good drinks, best scrap wood comes from the top shelf. Now I'm determined to keep pushing myself on this woodworking journey. So I'm going to try out some new skills again as I make a box. The box is going to be a present for a 70th birthday. So whilst I want to try something new, I've still got to maintain a degree of quality. Let's be honest though, wouldn't be one of my videos unless something went wrong. So let's have a bit of fun with this. So let's have a list here for new skills and pop that right up there to keep account. So let's have a list for mistakes here. Let's push that all the way up there. Hopefully we'll keep that number low enough we can still give this as a gift. I'm going to be looking at using these two offcuts of hardwood. I'm not sure what the first one actually is. Picked it up out of a scraps bin and cleaned it up, and the second one is walnut. And it's important to get all your pieces to the same thickness early on. So to do this, I'm going to offer this piece up to take a reference marking off of it. And once we've ripped it along its length, it's time to cross cut it over on the miter saw. One of the things I am learning is the importance of checking what your fit's like before you're going ahead and gluing. Just checking the grain orientation, everything's smooth and everything fits together nicely. It saves so much disappointment later. We're only on to measuring, and I'm on mistake number 1 already. Before the project started, I took some quick measurement of the bottle. I've glued those pieces up thinking I've got enough material, and I've not realised that the measurements I've taken for the bottle are in fact going to be the inside measurements, and I'm going to need extra material to cover the outside dimensions of the box. Is there a project that goes by without me making some sort of beginner mistake? So whilst that glue's drying, I'll just take a moment to ask you to hit that like and subscribe button. Really helps out a small channel like mine. Now let's get that thing out of clamps. So because I don't want to spend ages trying to sand the inside of a box, I'm going to clean up all the faces, all the edging, and give it a light sanding. Next it's time to measure out and cut all the pieces. Still blissfully unaware of that first mistake that's been made. Measure twice, cut once. One day it'll stick. Now this is mistake number 2. At this point I've realised that I ain't got enough material like I said before. I panicked that much that I glued some pieces together. I then tried to film an explanation for you guys and forgot to turn my microphone on. I'll count that as one mistake, but sadly it does take us up to a grand total of 2 mistakes and no new skills. This isn't the start that I wanted. Panic over, we're back on track. We have sides, we have ends, we have just enough room inside for the bottle. Measure twice, cut once as they say. Hopefully one day I'll learn that. Now the next task, quite simple. I need a top and a bottom, but I want them to be from a solid piece. That large piece that started with, because of them mistakes, has whittled its way down too thin. So I'm in for a piece of scrap red oak that I've got. I'm going to try resaw this because it's way too thick. What I do love about this red oak is it engraves really well, which is going to be a key part of this gift. Now here we go with our first new skill. Believe it or not, I've never actually resawn a piece of wood. My usual MO is to just use the thicknesser and take material off of it, but that's very wasteful, and I'm trying to make this scrap go as far as I can. So the next part I'm going to look at is putting a rebate in both the top and the bottom. It's really important that I get the right pieces and right one even though I think they're the same size and might be out by a touch, and I want a nice snug fit. So I'm going to go over to the table saw. I'm going to set the height for about half the thickness of my side pieces, and then I'm going to run them through, moving the fence back smidgen by smidgen each time until I've got the desired width. And after a bit of cleanup, we're left with this nice tidy rebate. That's just going to help the pieces all sit together. And for the first time of doing rebating, I'm quite pleased with how that's come out. Moving on now, we're going to do the finger or box joints, depending on what you want to call them. I've already set up a jig. I've done a little bit of practicing. 3 jigs, 12 attempts later, I'm finally happy that I've got it dialed in. Fairly simple, you line your piece of wood up with your jig, make a cut, move it over the top onto the fingers, make a cut, move it over, and it's eat, slink, rinse, repeat all the way through all the pieces. That should leave us with a nice solid connection that locks into place easily. And there we go with a dry fit. Only, what have we got, 2, 4, 6, only 8 clamps. Now for the world's most stressful glue up yet again. Now I say that every time, but that's because I'm yet, in about 3 years of woodworking, to have a glue up that's not been stressful. I don't know how you lot get on with them, but every time there seems to be a problem. So we're out of the clamps now and it's clean up time yet again. I use a flush trim bit to take away a little bit of the overhang, and I sand down the bottom as it had a little bit of a rock in it. It's then on to every amateur's favourite trick, a bit of glue and sanding. Next up, we've got cutting the base plate. We need to get this cut spot on so it's nice and tight and snug, and it'll help hold everything square. Not to mention you don't want your bottle of whiskey dropping out at the bottom, do you? How embarrassing would that be? And while that glue dries, we'll just have a quick recap of the score. And I've got it as 3 new skills compared to 2 mistakes. So we're in the lead. We're well into the second half. We just have to keep it steady. As long as nobody says anything daft, like, what's the worst that could happen? Idiot. Nobody wants to hear a bottle of whiskey rattling around the box. I've dug out some foam, again from the scrap pile, and cut it to length. Now that I've got my box trimmed down and got rid of this excess piece, I've realised my next mistake. I got so excited when all my fingers fit together that I forgot to go back to the table saw and cut a little groove for the lid to go in. I've dug out a slot cutter. Don't quite think it's meant for this, but I'm going to give it a whirl. I've had to make some shims for the inside so it doesn't go too deep. I've got my inserts in now. I've clamped on some extra pieces of wood to try take away the possibility of this rocking in and out. Hopefully this will give me a bit of a firmer base to run this round. What could go wrong? Well, yet another mistake. It took a couple of minutes to calm down a bit. Taking the router out, I've managed to just catch the edge. There's no fix for that. I can maybe try to soften it a little bit with a block plane or something, but price you pay for learning as you go, isn't it? I never thought about how to take the router out. I thought long and hard about the depth, about putting some shims in, but never about how I was going to take it out. Never mind, let's keep going. There's only a little to do, and then we're done with this one. Chalk another one up to experience. We're back after the disappointment this morning. I've used a quick pastrami, pickle and mustard sandwich to put my head right, and now I've got this little piece to fix on to the lid. I've tried setting it just on top. You can see some gaps. I don't like that, so I'm going to recess it in. That sandwich seems to have done its job because the first thing I've tried to look at seems to work. Being a gift, this of course needed engraving with a bit of personalisation, and then it was on to gluing. This was a very awkward glue up that took a little bit of time to sort out. While the glue's drying, I'm putting the final hand sanding touches to this piece, and we are firmly in the home straight now. So it's everyone's favourite point in a project. Time to add the finish. I'm going to my go-to oil here, which is Odie's. Lovely when it buffs on, smells amazing. Leave it a short while and buff it out. So as this piece is having its final buff, I thought it were a good time just to look at how we've finished up. And it's ended 4-all. But you know what? For all the mistakes in this, I won't change this piece. Because this piece shows yet again how much I'm developing, even when there's setbacks. So I'll tell you what, let's get rid of those. And let's just focus on these. And as we have a look at the final beauty shots, it leaves me to reflect back on where this video's gone. It started out as a birthday gift, about trying something new, and about an entry for a scrapbook build-off. And it ended up being a video that's about keeping going, about looking for improvement, and seeing if we can just get better every single time. So if you're sat on the fence, wondering about whether to get a laser or not, this is the video for you. What's more, you stick around, I'll talk to you about how much it cost me, how long I think it's going to take to pay me back, and just how important it's become in my workshop. So this week's video started out as me trying to show how I'm upgrading one of my products. These artboards, one of the first products I made to sell. It's simply some pallet wood, plain down, stuck together, and some vinyl lettering on top that I've ordered in. And there's a problem with that. You've got to order the vinyl, you've got to pay for the vinyl, and you've got to wait for the vinyl. All adds up in your production costs and times. And whilst it looks alright, it never sits truly flat with the wood. It always looks like it's got a bit of room for improvement. So in my latest video, I looked to put that right. And it was during the course of this build that I realised this video's not so much about making another artboard. It was about how useful and dependent I'd become on my laser. Now let's be honest, the laser's not going to replace all the bits of woodworking that we all love, or even the bits that we hate. You've still got to prepare your wood, got to plane it, got to do everyone's favourite task of sanding it. You're still going to have to do your marking, measure once, cut twice. Don't ask me how I know that on this project. I'm 2 years in, I'm still measuring once and cutting twice. A laser's not going to help with the dust collection on your chop saw either, or help decision making on routers. Is it a chamfer? Is it a roundover? All these basic elements of woodworking will still be there with a laser. But where it excels is personalisation. Like this board, for example. I can easily put any child's name I want on that. It takes 2 minutes to change. And you still get to do everyone's favourite bit of adding the finish afterwards. Now, talking more universally with lasers, this is what I love about them. Creating little jigs so I can get feet equal all the time. And once you've done all those things, you can just crack on with finishing your project. You can hang it nicely just on a conveniently placed nail. You would have known that with our final finishing touches are just a couple of pegs. And luckily, just in time, we've got our first piece of artwork to go on it. Look at that. Hey up, he's a talented guy, isn't he? So when you come away from this appalling effort of a first take for this video, the product left behind, and that's down to no small part in the laser. So overall, it just shows how much a difference a laser makes and using some decent wood. I think this is 10 times better than this. And ultimately, the costings have been the same. The lettering in vinyl was costing me £8 to £9 depending what it said. This piece of wood cost me £6. Nice piece of oak, looks so much better. So the thing that I like most with laser is simply versatility. You can make so many different things or customise so many different items. So for this week, for example, I'm making some farewell cards, some thank you cards, and some coasters to go with them. Everything can be personalised and you can make it however you want it to be. There's so many products that I'm making with this, from bottle openers, little cake boards, signs for stalls, Father's Day gifts, key rings, all types of coasters, wooden and slate, and the good old fashioned serving board. Now, I promised you I'd tell you about how much this thing costs. So when we're talking figures, there's a couple of things that you need to know. First of all, these are my opinions. I'm not lucky enough to be sponsored by anybody. I've paid for everything out of my own money. So you'll get told how it is. Second of all, this thing ain't going to bring value, I'm going to tell you. And the third thing to know, when it comes to these bits of kit, just over my shoulder, I really am a basic user. So looking at costs then, the laser, the honeycomb spoil board, and a subscription to Lightburn, which is a really decent editing software, was around £400 or just under. So to put that into comparison, a mitre saw at the moment, like this one, retails at just over 300. A selection of new power tools coming in at about 350. Now I chose to use those tools for a couple of reasons. One is to show you that we spend this money in our workshop all the time. Buying something new is normal, as long as that tool progresses you further on. Now you wouldn't dream of sanding every project with a hand sander, because this is more. If this is going to save you 10 times the amount of sanding that is, then that's money well spent. And it's like that with the laser. You look at the cards and the coasters that I was making this week as a leaving gift. Once you've done the design work, it's as easy as just pressing go. You might have to change someone's name. That's 30 seconds. You press go. And whilst that's working, you can be on making another project. But what about actual money savings? As I've said, the vinyl for these boards are costing me somewhere £7, £8, £9 depending on what it exactly says. If you're able to print it yourself, instead of paying and outsourcing that job, you're saving money. The amount of stuff I've been able to sell because I've been able to personalise it, and I can personalise it myself, again, without outsourcing it. Again, you're saving money every time. So looking back in the 8 months that I've had this, it's already paid for itself. Half through savings and half through the additional work it's managed to gain me so far. It's an investment you definitely won't regret. Right guys, hope you're well. Today is Monday, it's Father's Day on Sunday, and I've just received an order this morning for one of these up here, a rustic wine chiller for the garden. I've got till Wednesday, maybe push it till Thursday. Needs personalising. The lady also wants a garden bottle opener, typically, not the type I've already got, so I'm going to have to build that. This is going to be a quick and dirty build. And it's also going to be a bit of a test to see how quickly I can turn an order around. So we're going to have a timer up here, and let's see how we get on. So I've got my materials for this build. I've got 2 lengths of deck board. I'm going to create a box around the tub to hold ice for the wine. Nothing fancy. Like I say, quick and dirty. Right guys, I've planed the boards, I've cut them, so I've got 8 pieces, 4 short, 4 long, and here we are, this is what we've got. Well, a nice little bit of engraved detail there, just as the customer asked for. Right, we're about 90 minutes in now. Every clamp I've got is on this thing yet again. and you can start to see how it's going to look. There we go. About another 20 minutes in on this, a little bit of light sanding, put some supports in the bottom, and that should just hopefully raise that up slightly. First part made, under 2 hours. I'm happy with that. So we're into home stretch now. We've just got a quick little bottle opener to do. Add this engraving while I've been doing other bits, so it's just a quick little glue and clamp it together. How is it that something so small takes so many bloody clamps? Right, it's Wednesday now. Really got to get this finished. No time to waste. Just got to get this smashed through and done. Well, there we go. 2 finished products. Quite pleased with them. I think they've come out quite nicely. So let's talk cost. I've used 1.5 deck boards. They cost me £7 each. Plastic tub cost me £3, 17. The bottle opener itself I bought as a larger pack, but they're roughly about £1 each. So £18 altogether. I don't think that's too bad. And for the pair, I've charged 40. I think that's a fairly reasonable price. Not the greatest hourly rate, but it'll go towards some more tools. So, last year, I made a couple of these for Father's Day to try and sell. Didn't go too well. Think I know why. Looks crap. This year, I've bought some hardwood. Got my laser engraver. Let's see if we can upgrade this to something that's going to be more appealing to the audience that's out there. And, if you stick with me, I'll let you know how I've got on this first week or so selling these things. So quite simply, job 1 is to rip this board nicely down the middle into 2 and clean up those edges. Next comes a very gentle round over, followed by some marking and pre-drilling for the hardware. Two of my favourite bits in any project. It's the lasering followed by finish time. And the final bit for this project, simply mounting on the bottle opener itself. And there you go, a 2000% upgrade, without doubt. Now, I promised you earlier I'd let you know how I've got on with these. So far, so good. Showed it to a friend who ordered one. Told 2 of their friends, they ordered one each as well. I've had 3 in a week and I haven't even had to do aught for it yet. But I could do with your help. Currently, I'm selling these for £10, but I wonder if they're worth a little bit more, or maybe even a little bit less. So where would you price them? 8, 10, £12? Maybe even £15? Let me know in the comments below, and you could really help me out. So this is a massive improvement. If you want to see how I got on prepping and going up my first market stall, watch this video right here. It'll let you know all about it. Thanks for watching. Oh, for sake.
So let's be honest, in the grand scheme of things, I'm pretty much an amateur. I'm self-taught through YouTube videos. So to get this pallet wood into decent shape and be able to use proper joinery is going to be quite some feat. Now, I've never quite managed the proper joinery techniques, so here's hoping I managed to get it right on this one. First of all, we've cleaned up the pallet wood, laminated it together to get longer lengths, and now we're getting 2 true square edges. That's a really decent start. I hope I keep up at this pace.
And this is where we're getting to. Very basic how it's going to look. There's a lot of trimming down to do, but that will be one of the ends. Right, it's time to cut some simple joinery into this project now. I've got my 4 posts lined up, clamped together, keep everything square. Got my rails. I'm going to take half the thickness of this, half the thickness of that. Should look nicely line up, nice and square, nice and flush. I'm going to use my circular saw. I'm just going to sneak up on these cuts, keep it nice and tight.
So after a little bit of clean up, I was dead chuffed with 1, how neat they were, but 2, just look at that fit. That's not bad for my first one. Once I'm happy, it's on with some glue and time to get everything clamped together.
Well, it's a new day. Let's take these clamps off, see how that's gone. Not like I've got history of doing these things wrong, is it? Right, now that we're all glued up, everything's square, everything's set, it's time to just trim off the edges. Don't fancy edge, just a good old handsaw.
After a little bit of clean up, I'm chuffed with how that looks, so I move on to the lats. I make sure I've got a square edge. I've inserted a stop block so I get repeatable cuts, and it's time to make a pile of these because I'm going to need quite a few in the end. I add these to my pile of stock and save them for later.
Oh, for fuck's sake. Right, so I've realised I've made a pretty big mistake. I was gonna cut a groove in before I glued everything up so I could have these sunk in, be a bit more like fitted with a tenon. I got so excited to glue it all up, I forgot to cut it in and put all my slats in. We'll have to go to plan B on that one. Right, so it's time to put these mistakes right now. I've got my 5 lats, got my spacers, make sure it's all right. I've gone and put a pencil line 2 centimeters in from the top and the bottom, and I've marked out all my bits. I'm just going to go through and colour them in so I know which ones are waste and which ones aren't. I don't want any more mistakes, and I'm going to come back with the router and chop them all out. That should just sink these in nice and flush then.
One of the hardest skills I'm finding with woodworking is patience, and that mistake was just that. I was so excited to be moving along, getting to glue something together, that I completely missed a step. It's an area I'm working on, but luckily it didn't hold me back at all.
So I've got it all kind of laid out now for the ends. And I was looking at the joinery and I thought I was overcomplicating it by trying to do half laps both here and all the way up at the top as well. So I've rethought it. I think what I'm going to do is maybe a simple butt joint up there, reinforced with some dowels. And then I was thinking about doing the same here, and then I thought, well, with angles like this, normally on roofs you get rebated, so I've got a practice piece. I'm thinking I'm just going to do it like that, and again I can always reinforce it with dowels as well as the glue. Well, that was one hell of a stressful glue up. Some nice bits of joinery in there, reinforced with dowels. Daisy chained some ratchet straps together to try and get some tension on this awkward shape. Now it's time to attach these 3 long pieces that are going to be the 2 stretchers at the bottom and the top piece, and get them all attached nicely. I'm going to go with a mortise and tenon. So I'll cut a hole in there, and there, and one up the top, up there. And I'll do that by rotating these pieces round and just taking a centimetre depth off each one as we turn it round, and that should give us the tenon that we need to go in the hole.
There we go, a little bit of clean up with the chisel. I've got my first set of tenons I've ever cut. Quite happy with them. One of the most intimidating parts of this build is getting the maths right. I've never been good at that, and if things don't match up with where they should go, it's never going to fit together.
Right, so I've got my tenons. I transferred my markings on for making the holes. I'm going to use 20mm Forstner bit and then chisel out the rest. This mobile drill press is awesome for this task. It keeps my drill at 90 degrees, stops me making any errors, and just allows for a little bit of clean up with the chisel afterwards. Well, here we go with the dry fit. I appreciate there's some ratchet straps holding everything together and a little bit of bracing at the top, but that is starting to come together. You can tell what it is.
So, time to put some of that learning into action. I've remembered not to glue up before you do your lats first. So I went through, I routed a groove in both the top and bottom pieces, got my lats, glued them together, and then got pretty much every clamp that I own and clamped it down.
Oh, well, I'm at that stage now, and I don't know if you guys ever get here, where this build is absolutely kicking my ass. I'm about 7 weeks in to a 2 to 3 week build. That's never good. So far, I've managed to cock a few bits up, drop a beam on my head. That was good fun. But, final little bits. Now, a little bit of routing, endless sanding, and then we're on to finish, and then we'll be done. So let's power through, get this finished. This trim router came into its own on this build. Easily gets into all the small places. Right, mattress is on its way, guys, and, well, everything's still in pieces. No pressure there then. Right, we're in now with final hand sand. This is just to knock back them edges from where I've wiped it down with a damp cloth. Sanding is over. Can't tell you how much of a relief that is. Now it's on to painting. I've got a base coat to go on first, 3 coats of just off-white paint, followed by a coat of polyurethane to seal it up, keep it sort of mark-free. Of course, done that very British thing. I'm trusting the weather. Got sunshine for 5 hours. So the base layer went on in the garage. So here we're going on with first coat, denibbing, second coat, denibbing, third coat, final denibbing, and now we're going on with the final finish, some polyurethane. Finally, it's build time. I'm a little bit nervous though. I know it went together in here, went together when we painted. What if it don't go together when I got to put it in a room? I've only got 3 hours to get this thing put together, glued and made up before the girls get back. Well, that's a relief, isn't it? The dry fit in situ actually works. Time to stick some glue into this now. As with the rest of the project, it's good old-fashioned wood glue and a little bit of clamping pressure. For this, I'm again using ratchet straps, and for those tight joints, a little bit of persuasion. Once I'm happy everything's square, it's on with the bed slats at the bottom. With a tiny bit of tidying up, we're all there. Wait for this glue to dry, put the mattress on, and it's time to show the kid. Wonder what she'll think.
It's awesome. It's fabulous. It's amazing. I love you, my new bed, Daddy.
That answers the question, doesn't it? Can a total amateur like me use proper joinery in a project? I think you can. How does a length of rope save a woodworking project? Because they're nothing alike. So let's get straight into the build and I'll talk you through it as we go. So for this project, I'm going to be building a picture frame. The first design element was planned, however the second one is due to a mistake that I've made. So now that I'm at the width that I want, I'm very conscious that I've got just a square all round board. So what I'm going to do, I turn my table saw on a slight angle and I'm going to try bring a little gradient. So hopefully you can see what that's done now. Just give us this lovely gradient along this edge, stopping it being so bulky. Now that we've got our profile sorted out, we've got it first sanding, it's time to start marking out. This photo frame is going to be 6 inches by 4 inches, standard size of a photograph in the UK. But I'm going to make it just a fraction under, so the photograph, when it's sat in place, you don't see the edges. Then I'm going to look at mitre in the corners, put that together, and that should come back and give us a fantastic looking frame. So this is where I want to talk to you about design. Sometimes less is more. Think of it this way. Go to your local pub for a lunch, and what do? They put more on to try add value. You go to a really posh restaurant, what do? Charge double the money, half the stuff. But the small things that they do exceedingly well. This project's just like that. I could fill this full of all sorts of design ideas, but a little bit less could be a little bit more. And this is where that tapered edge comes in. And because it's tapered inwards, it's going to draw your eye in towards the picture. So next up is gluing, and here's where my troubles began yet again. Putting the glue on's easy. I figured a bit of tape should hold it square, but trying to get any sort of clamping pressure on this was nigh on impossible. I've gone in already and just sprinkled some walnut dust from the table saw on the joints. They were pretty good, but not perfect. So we're just out of clamps. And for my first ever mitered picture frame, that doesn't look too bad. There's a bit of sanding to be done, and somehow I've managed to get a red mark on it from the clamps. Should come off easy enough. And on we went with a bit of clean up sanding. We worked through the grits to 180, popped with some water, and hit it one more time. So we're moving on now, and what we need is something to hold the photo in at the back. I have some 2mm ply that I use on my laser. I'm going to use the bandsaw. I'm going to make 2 L brackets, a piece to go over the top of the L brackets that will cover the full length of the back so the picture doesn't fall out. So we've got our L brackets in place. I've got my 2 offcuts that I want to put on here. I'm just going to dab a little bit of CA glue on them, drop them on, and then these aren't attached yet, so we'll take it all off as one, paint it, and then stick it back on. The back is now on. Overall, I'm quite happy. I am slightly disappointed though. I've just managed to mark it down here, which brings us to design feature number 2. That's quite simply the feature that takes your eye away from anything that's not 100% right. And that's where the rope comes in. This is going to come down here and have a couple of hearts hanging off of it that are conveniently placed. I use a laser to mark out 2 heart shapes. Cut those out again. I would have used a laser to do this, but the material was just too thick, so bandsaw was a better option. Had a quick bit of sanding, finishing off with a pilot hole before adding the string to attach it to the rope. There you go, complete with a couple of love hearts. Time for some finish, and then just put a stand on the back and we're all done. Now this is my go-to finish whenever I'm making someone a present. It goes on great, smells great, feels great afterwards. I can't speak highly enough about this stuff, and it's so easy to use. And for the stand, I had a quick look in my scraps bin, found a triangular shaped piece, chopped it down to size, and it was all good to go. Now I'm starting to get into the habit where I like to finish a project with some hand tool work. Something about it that just makes it feel like the end of the project. This, as much as anything, makes me feel like a craftsman, although that's probably not actually the case, is it? Once I got the stand shaped down, a small bit of light sanding on it, I simply stuck it on with some glue. And that brings us to the end of the video. I've had a blast on this one. I think it's turned out great. I love those 2 design features, one drawing your eye in, one adding a bit of contrast whilst hiding a mistake that I've made. I'd be really interested to know, what do you guys think of this project? More importantly, what would you have done different? What design elements would you have used? How do you guys avoid those glue up disasters that I seem to be having every week? So we move on now that the grass is down. I'm going to take this area here, just outside the patio, under the watchful eye of the dog, and make a small to medium sized playhouse. First of all, I lay out the rough shape of the base before making some pilot holes and inset holes, just so I can get my deck screws all the way in and get enough bite. Whilst positioning the base, I realised that the tree overhung slightly onto where I wanted to build the sides. So I took a few minutes just to trim the side back, but I'm quite confident it'll grow back and around the corner of the playhouse when it's all up and finished. I took my time adding on the side supports. I wanted everything as square as I could get it. That way it'll help later on when I came to put some sheet goods on. It's always difficult working on your own, trying to hold everything in place whilst drilling. So for this, I just used some clamps just to try giving me an extra set of hands. On a couple of the joints, like this one, I used some quite big bolts just to make sure that I tied all the pieces in nice and tightly together. Here I'm using a socket set attached to my driver. The cross members came next, again using some clamps as an extra set of hands and my spirit level to make sure that I had things as square as I could do. Can you spot the error? Just realised I put this post on the wrong side. What a plonker. I'll have to redo that again. You know you've made a mistake when even your wife comes out to point out that it's wrong and she knew better than you did. What a plonker. Typically it was the one joint where I've managed to round off the head of the screws, so after chopping through I moved the pole onto the other side, started again, fixing it in place, then putting a nice cross support on. And that's it for the end of the night. Starting to take shape now. I'm going to have to call it for this evening. I don't want to be annoying the neighbours too much. But I think it's coming together now, you can tell what that is. Next I moved on to doing the framing for the doors and windows. Once I was happy everything was level, I clamped in some supports just to temporarily hold everything still whilst I drilled in from the side. Morning's progress going on nicely. Put the flooring down, a bit of weatherproof sheeting at the back, 2 of the back pieces on. So that's 3 boards on. Now down to this gap here. I've measured it and at its widest point at the bottom it's 180 centimetres. So I'm just going to take one more of these, just try cut it down in advance. So I've put the final piece up and then all I've done, I've just run my pen down, described a line. You can see those are the lines I've scribed. I'm just going to freehand straight across it on a circular sort. After talking some nonsense there to you, I decided to screw in some more supports just to tie all the sheeting goods together, hold it nice and tight. I'd added a tiny bit of plastic sheeting to the back at the bottom. There was a bit of a lip on the back side and I didn't want any water running in. I thought this might be a good way to divert it out. I can always cover it up later on. Now we're going to add the window. I'm going to put some all-weather glue, some silicone adhesive around the frame, stick it over and then clamp it in place. Kind of skipped a few steps here. Put a couple of coats of green paint on the back. Just trim the edges down at the top. Now I'm going to move on to just bracing the rafters a little bit. Got my sheet goods to go on top and the cladding pot front. It's all coming together now.
It's always good to have a second pair of hands. Once the roof was on, I moved on to sanding down the siding that I'd got
There we go.
before painting it, ready to go on the front and sides.
Time to start painting.
Moving on, I cut all the pieces to the correct size that I needed. I'd bought a nail gun a couple of weeks previous as I'd seen one on sale. I didn't realise quite how handy it was going to be and how much it does make it easy just to hold with one hand and fire some brad nails in quickly. The layers built up quickly and I just used my spirit level as I was setting each one just to make sure that everything was in line. I didn't want things to look all wonky when it was done. The side up until the window joist went on nice and easy, but as I found with this one and the one with the perspex over the top, it did get slightly more trickier trying to keep more and more small pieces all lined up nice and neatly. The last couple of pieces went on quite easy. I just pre-cut some angles into them just to make it fit nice and snug. It's starting to take shape now, just needs a bit of trimming around the doors and windows. I felt like roof tiles overlapping would look better than one solid sheet. So I moved on to waxing out all of the edges just to set the windows to their full size. I finished the front off with a little bit of trim just to neaten things up and just hide the rafters.
And there we go, that's the end of the framing. Still got a door to go on, a little window plant box and a sign up at the top for the general outlay, how things are going to be. This is pretty much it. Nice side window there, it's going to have some opening shutters so my little girl can play. Some grass on the inside, astroturf on the inside. Got all my pieces cut to length. Now all I'm going to do is just roughly put them together where they're going to go. One in the middle for support, one at the top. I'm going to go through, because I don't want anything to sit proud, I'm just going to drop them in. So I'm just going to measure up where I want them, put a line in. So next all we're going to do is look at fitting it together. For this I've got a little bit of help from the junior hog. Can you put me a little bit of glue on there? Thank you. Close it. Keep your body out of the way of the camera. There you go. Drop it. Oh. So there we go. Put it on the bandsaw. There's my effort. There's the original. Doesn't look too dissimilar. All I need to do now is crack on with a little bit of hand sanding. There we go, just knocking off some of the edges. Doesn't look half bad now. Off camera, I've just had a practice off some scraps, learning from last time. Managed to find a 12mm bit. It fits nicely. This is a bit of dowel. What I'm going to do is drill a hole in the centre. Fill with glue. There we have it. Now it's time to add the handle. Drill a hole in front of the door into the one support post at the back. Go for a quick dry fit before gluing into place and holding firm with a clamp. And there we go. Door's all finished. Quite happy with how it's come out. This is my entry for the Calpote Woodcraft Builder Chair Competition 2022. First of all, I set out finding some long pieces that I could use for the four legs. Once I've found them, I cut them down to size and then ripped them in two, giving me four legs, two that are slightly longer at the back. Next came the first mishap of the day whilst trying to clean up my legs. Should have really seen that coming. Once I'd gone and got some clamps and clamped my work down, I got to cleaning up all the sides. I'd love a planer to do this, but for now it's just a belt sander. I quickly moved on to take some measurements from another bar stool I made last year and mark them out onto my cross pieces before going back in and cutting and ripping them down to the correct sizes. For the joinery on this project, I use pocket holes. Here I am just making some holes with the jig before gluing and screwing the four legs together with all the cross pieces. With it being such a nice day out, I decided to make a little bit of a makeshift workbench out of a couple of pallets and a sheet of MDF. It's not perfect, but it's better than sweating away in the workshop. we go. About halfway through the build now. Got the seat in the back to put on. Some routing to round over the edges. And then some finish. I quickly moved on to plugging in pocket holes. For this I just placed some glue into the hole before tapping in some dowel and then later removing the excess. Now it's into the scrap bin. I've got some pallet wood that's in decent nick, so I thought I'd use this for the seat and the backrest. To make sure everything was the same size, I set up a little stop block on my mitre station, which just gave me quick and easy repeatable cuts. Here I am, putting the lens on top and just going for a dry fit, marking out where I need to notch out. Then came mistake number 2 of the day. I somehow managed to knock off the camera and lose a load of footage of me gluing things down. The 2 end pieces needed little notches taken out of them for where the back legs were, so I quickly went over to my bandsaw and chopped them out before getting on with the sanding. First I went to 80 grit and then up to 150 before rounding over all the edges. We're about halfway now. Done most of the frame, that's all sanded. Just need to chop out my plugs and sand them. Then I've got the seat and the backrest to do. Add a little bit of finish, I'll be there. But first, I'm going to have to stop for a brew. So I'm going to try just bring this down an angle, this backrest, just to try and make it look a bit more natural than being so square. Once I'd tapered off the seat back, I moved on to a bit of sanding and then routing and putting a round over all the way around the chair. I then went back over with some sandpaper on a sanding block and just made sure everything was nice and smooth. Here I've moved on to the back piece where I've glued it down and then nailed it in place with my nail gun. The final part was to paint. Normally I'd go for a natural wood finish, however I wanted the chair to match my barbecue area, which has got a grey trim, so I used some of the same paint. The finished chair, out on the decking, up to the bar, all made from scraps and materials saved from other jobs. Now we have it, it's all finished. Quite pleased with how it's turned out, it's nice and sturdy. Painted it the same colour as my bar top. I'm very pleased with how it's come out. Time for a brew. Cheers. In this video I'm going to be looking at making a box. Recently I've been doing a lot of viewing of some great Aussie makers, from Dana Made to Fix It Fingers, right through to Dash and his boxes. Dash is holding a challenge about making a box. I've never made one, something I've always wanted to do. This is just the sort of motivation I need. So I've dug out some small bits of pallet wood, table saw's ready, planer, I've got a chop saw on the other side. What's the worst that could happen, other than it not being square? Let's see how this goes. So what I want to do first is I need to glue all these boards together so I can then put them through a table saw and get them down to nice thin strips that I can use as the sides. So I'm going to have to spend a little bit of time just putting them through the thicknesser, trying to get a couple of nice smooth edges. And this is what I'm left with, a group of boards that when squeezed together sit relatively flat to each other. New glue spreader. Okay, it's not really new, I've just taken it out of the wife's baking supplies. She won't notice. So there we are, we're out of the clamps now. We've got a solid block of wood. It's looking fairly tight, everything needs squaring off. The plan now to take this down the table saw, just get a nice square edge down here first, then I'm going to rip 4 equal lengths. That should give me 4 sides of my box. I can then look at what I might do. It's not gone well. I've managed to get out all 4 pieces, but if you look, you can see some of these cut marks, and look where they go across. They come out halfway across my piece. It's going to leave it a lot smaller than I want. I didn't really want to make a ring box, but that's about where I'm heading at this rate. The technical Yorkshire term for this is that this is fucked, so I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board tonight with a cup of tea and figure out whether I can salvage out from this or whether I'm going to have to start again. Right, so we're back in the shop. It's been about 3 days. I've stopped sulking and come up with a new idea. Let's see if that one works. If not, this is going to end up being one hell of a long video if I have to do it 3 times. Well, today's not going to plan. I've been in the workshop for all of 5 minutes and I've snapped the drive belt thingamabob that runs the blades on the planer. I'm not happy. And I don't know where to get one from. So I'm going to have to try and figure that one out. Right, so far this ain't going well. I've messed up my cuts on my first attempt. I broke my planer on my second. 3rd time lucky. Let's hope I don't bugger it up. So now I'm going to change my approach. Taking 2 simple pieces, I'm going to glue them together. First of all, it's onto the planer to try and get it squared all round. I'm happy with how this has come out. It's nice and square. So it's on to adding some glue and getting the pieces clamped up so I've got a nice big surface area to work with. And there we go now, it's the next day. It's not a bad join, isn't that? Just needs another time or 2 back through the thicknesser. Just make sure everything's nice and uniform and neat. Now that I've planed it once more, it's on to sanding. I always like to draw a squiggly line so I know just how far along I am with my sanding. Keeps everything nice and even. There's some small minor imperfections on this piece, so I'm just going to fill them in round this knot with a bit of CA glue. I love the sound the activator makes. Not so much the sander though, so I've turned volume down. Right, we're getting there now. This is just a dry fit all together. I've snuck up on all my cuts so it should fit nicely. I know there's a little bit of tear out there, but I can honestly say I've never got something to fit so well with such small cuts just by sneaking up. Everything's square. I've never had anything that's been 100% square. I'm absolutely made up with this. Now it's time to move on to gluing and clamping. Before I end up with all my clamps on there, I end up with how they say check square, put the lid on. Every clamp I own now. Now it's time to cut down to the final dimensions, because as it is, it's just a bit too tall. Well, it's absolutely covering me in sawdust, but it's come off nice and clean. I'm not going to lie, I was really worried about that. With the errors that I've had so far, I didn't know how that was going to work out. Overall, quite pleased there. Just need some tidying up now with some sandpaper, and then I'll get on to putting the finishing touches on. Also, the good part is, it seems to have given me a picture frame. Lucky lady might be getting 2 presents this year. Might just solve what I'm going to put on the edging. Add this piece of oak engineered flooring, put it front planer, cleaned it up quite nice. I think that'll look really good. Right, I've managed now to get 3 really thin strips. Had to put them back through planer on top of another piece of wood because they were that thin that my planer didn't go that low. So let's see how these get on. Crikey, putting this detailed bit on this box is going to kill me. I've got 7 little strips between the base of this one and the lid. I've even had to resort to a bit of masking tape. I've run out of clamps that fit. I think I've got 3, 4, 5 there. 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 clamps in total, holding 7 bits of wood on. Unbelievable. Now it's time for one final sand, first with the orbital, then by hand, before marking out and screwing in the feet. So to hold the lid on, I'm going to make some little inserts. This is the reverse of the lid. I've just marked out where my corner points are inside the box. I've made these little pieces that should just sit at right angles to each other in the corner, so when you slide the lid on top, it should just hold it in place. So I say. Once all the pieces are in play, it's a quick dab of CA glue, activator and pushing them back on top of the pencil lines. So we've got the top of the box here. I've made this sort of like little thing to be a handle. So I'm just going to find where the centre is, mark that, and then come back and just glue this on. And then that's about it for this box. It'll just need finishing. I've got some polyurethane on order. Should come tomorrow, I think, and we'll get to finishing it. There we go, all ready for finishing now. The handle works, which is always a bonus. It's not snapped off. Happy with that. Just as I got on to finishing this box, the weather broke and we got a bit of unexpected sunshine, so I'm well chuffed to be able to get outside into the garden and just get this completed out with a nice bit of sun on my back. And here we are, the finished article. It's not turned out too badly, everything's standing up nicely. The trim's come up, I think gives it a nice little bit of detail. Lid comes off nice and easy. Back on, off again easy. It's got this nice little tray inside. Fit some more little bits and pieces. And again, some further dividers inside just to give it sort of 6 compartments all together. It's deep enough to fit sort of a watch box or something like that in. I don't think it's gone too bad in the end, given the problems at the start. I just hope the next project isn't half as stressful as this one's been. Cheers.
Hello again. In this video I'm going to be looking how I made another mug kitchen. The difference this time is I've been watching a lot of Dana Made clips, a guy that does wonderful work with pallet wood, so it just challenged me to think what I could do with some, and could I make a product that looked good despite using free and readily available wood. Quite pleased with how it's come out. It's finished quite well. Let's hope the little girl whose birthday this is for enjoys it.
First part of this build is simply ripping down some of the pallet lengths and putting them through the thicknesser, trying to make everything the same size and nice and smooth. The thing I like about pallets is you get lots of different variations in the wood colours, so here I'm just picking out the best orientation for them all. Then comes what felt like half a bottle of glue being poured out to stick all the lengths back together. I did this in 2 separate parts, which just enabled me to stick them together a little bit more easily with the clamps that I had. I have some homemade clamps for these larger glue ups, although they're not very good. They'll have to do for now. So we're back again. I've left this to dry overnight. It's been weighted down, clamped up. Let's get it out and see how it got on. So this first join looks absolutely spot on. No real dramas there. This one just raised just a touch. Nothing that the belt sander won't take out.
Firstly, I just take off all the excess glue with the belt sander. I found that by scribbling on my work first with a pencil, it helps with the sanding, making sure that every part gets hit nice and evenly. And once it's sanded, it's now time to square off the ends. Routers are great for cutting circles, especially when you make a quick jig like this one. This went about 3/4 of the way down, and I finished it off with a jigsaw afterwards, and then came back with a flush trim bit just to make things all nice and neat and even. It's time to make the legs now. Each leg's made out of 3 lengths of pallet wood, glued and stuck together. And here I am just drawing out the guidelines so I can recess to put the support beams in place. Should keep everything nice and neat. And then it's the old faithful combination of bucket loads of glue, followed by some clamps which should hold these all in place, keeping them nice and tight. I move on and I go for a bit of a dry fit with the top going into the legs, making sure everything will go where it should go. And then once I've done that, it's back to gluing and trying to set it with as many clamps as I've got going. As you can see, some parts took a little bit of persuasion to get into place, and then fitting all the clamps was a challenge in itself. Whilst I was fairly happy with the fit and how the surface area is glued together, I just wanted to secure it a little bit more. So here I'm drilling some holes before sticking some dowels in with a little bit of glue, and then coming back and trimming them off, ready for sanding. The top's really starting to look great. Now it's time to put the backboard on, which I made just in the same process of thicknessing down some wood, gluing it together, and now here it goes, just gluing onto the support legs. Again, I'm just going to hold this in place with some dowel pegs, firstly for security, but secondly I thought the contrast in the different colours of wood would look quite nice, add another decorative feature. Believe it or not, this was the hardest part of the entire glue up, trying to get a shelf to stick on minimal contact whilst not really having anywhere to clamp it. It looks like it's gone on quite smoothly, but I think this was attempt 3 or 4 if I'm honest. It's time to start the finish process, and here I am just putting on a slight round over just to ease the edges before adding some finish which helped bring out the colour of the grain. I've added some hooks with some utensils on, and there's the finished product.
It's Christmas time, and what better gifts than something homemade? I'm going to make a phone holder for my brother-in-law, so he's got somewhere to put his phone and his keys when he comes in. I have a quick look through my scraps, I find this 18mm ply. This should do grand. First of all, as always, I mark out where I want to cut. And once that's all done, I move over to the mitre station and it's time to make some cuts. So, nothing's glued together yet. I've just got my set square holding a few bits together, making sure that the back's square to 90. And then for the phone to hold on to, I just want this little piece in here. But then I've got this right unsightly gap there, one at the top. So I'm going to see if I can work out some angles. After a bit of messing about, I decided that the best angle, quite simply, just 245 bevels on it. That way it sticks nice and flush there, without me having to do too much maths. So the next thing that I'm going to do is I just want to build a little drawer on here wallet can sit on top, and a little drawer with a bit of space for some odds and sods, some bits and bats, all that you might need just hanging around. So I'm going to offer this up, make some markings, back onto the mitre store, and I'll get them cut down to size. So as a rough design, it's sort of coming together now. The phone's going to sit there, wallet or keys on top of there, and a little drawer there. Need some refining, but I think as a prototype for what I could make, it's looking alright. Well, after a boatload of sanding, it looks like we're finally getting there. Don't really want to sand it too much, but it were all a bit scuffed and all a bit dirty, so just took it down gently, down to 150 grit. What I will say is it's amazing how much dust just a bit of light sanding makes. So my head says to glue this back bit and this bit that's going to be the box all at once, because it'll all help to keep each other square. My gut tells me that's a lot of glue and it'll go off very quickly. I might end up not quite with the result I want. So I think I'm going to go in 2 halves. So for this one, I think I'm going to give these corner clamps a bit of a go. Used them a couple of times, mixed success. They look like they could be just the thing for this job. See how they get on. So I've got some 3mm ply. I've cut out 2 sides, a back and a bottom. Just going to glue them together now with 2-part CA glue. And then I've got what's going to be the front of the door. Once I get the frame built, then I'll look at getting the door all squared. But I won't be able to do that until all the glue's dried on this.
Now it's time to round over the edges, just making things a little bit neater. And now that the final detail's done, it's time for 3 coats of polyurethane with a foam brush, sanding to 320 grit in between.
Right, I'm not going to lie to you guys. I've proper ballsed up. I've spent so much time working on putting my new workshop in that I've left myself basically no time on this pallet wood challenge. You know the one from that Aussie guy.
You need to use a pallet, many pallets, or part of a pallet, and any other ingredients that you want to use.
Now I've got enough ideas. There's lots of stuff I like to make out of pallet wood. But I've just left myself so short on time and I'm completely demotivated. I'm getting desperate now. My mind's gone blank. I just need something.
Just get started.
And with that little gem in the back of my mind, I got out all my pallet wood, as many other things that I could think of for other ingredients, and I just got started. Now the worst thing about pallet wood, when you're doing a project for the check square master, is that it's just not square. Well, that won't cut it on this build, so I've knocked together a quick square edge jig and it's straight to work. After what felt like a bloody age, I'd managed to get everything through and two nice straight square edges. I needed a square straight face as well, so I slipped everything through the planer before hopping onto the mitre station and chopping into some random pieces. I love a bit of colour, and I'd found these lovely bright wood stains. Never used them before, so I thought I'd give it a bash. Real easy to use, and I think they came out quite well. So the plan's simple, is to take this boring breeze block wall and add some colour and make this a space that you really want to be in to make stuff. So first of all, I had to groove out a couple of channels for the wiring, and it's on with the liquid nails, and let's get things stuck up. Now there's absolutely nothing fancy about this process. It's simply glue, press and repeat all the way up to the top. I've also slipped a bit of extra wiring in there. That'll come in handy later. Now I don't mind a bit of graft, but I don't really work this quick. I've sped it up. One pallet wall, all done. And with no measuring, that is what I've managed to have left over. I'm quite impressed with that. So here's how we look at the halfway point, and I'm well chuffed with how this has come together. Now coming back to that wire that I mentioned earlier, I thought why not go the full 9 yards and make my logo and make it stand proud from the wall with some lighting behind it. I'm no artist, but that was the best that I could do. The problem I had though, this hog fought back and a sneaky little bugger snapped my bandsaw blade. So I had to go a little bit old school and get out the good old jigsaw. Now this thing's about 20 years old and it's horrific, but it got it there in the end. A little bit of elbow grease here, a bit of clean up never goes amiss, and then it's on to painting. Just got some ordinary black spray paint, just turning the hog black. Now my first idea was quite simply to router this in, but that we're going to get a little bit complex with all the joins and I didn't want everything to chip out, so I just went on with some spray paint. Similar effect from a distance. Got a couple of wooden blocks behind the logo just to make it stand proud, and once that's on I can centre the bottom line and then it goes. And I've got some LED lights to sit behind it. Lovely. And I think that looks alright. Certainly brightened the place up and made my mood a lot better, although there's a lot to be said for that dancing. So since finishing off this sign and this pallet wood colour wall, I feel that this place has been much better. I've managed to get the cupboards and worktops all finished off, just adds to a great feel, makes this wall look even more special. I'm really chuffed with this. I'd like to say a big thank you to Mark for hosting the challenge, really appreciate it, really love taking part, give me something to work towards and motivation to get this workshop finished. I hope you got something from this video and from my journey in general. Maybe it's even inspired you to begin your journey. That just leaves me to say thank you very much for watching. Every view is always appreciated, and I'll see you on the next one.